Well, hi there. Good afternoon. My name is Ian Robertson. I'm the CEO of the Greater Victoria Harbour Authority, and I'd like to welcome you here to, I think, number 8 in the Waterside chats that we've been doing as an organization to just try and connect the community with what's going on at the Harbour Authority and our various operations. Before I begin, I'd like to just state with respect that we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen people, specifically the Esquimalt Nation and Songhees Nation, whose relationship to the land and harbor continue to this day. And we're very honored to have both of these nations on our board of directors and have been since the inception of GVHA back in 2002. I'm joined today by Judy Kitts. Judy is our First Nations engagement manager, and I think Judy coming up to year number 3 with GVHA. Is that correct?
That's right, like 3 this week.
Fantastic. So, well, congratulations. I'm so glad you're with us. And I thought, there's been a lot of work that as an organization we've been working on in terms of, my gosh, reconciliation with the First Nations and Indigenous people throughout the island, but also around economic development and also supporting culture and the efforts that they embark on. And I thought it would be really good just to kind of just have you, Judy, talk about in general what we've been working on, a little bit about why this is so important for you, why it's important for the organization, and what you see kind of the future holding. But maybe it would be good just to talk a little bit about, your current role, your background, your tenure in the field, because this portfolio is not new for you. You did this before. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that and introduce yourself.
Sure. So I'm Judy, and I have been with the organization for 3 years this week. I'm a non-Indigenous woman that was born in Cornwall, Ontario, in the traditional territories of the Akwesasne Mohawk Nation, and I moved to Victoria, I think like 12 years ago now. I'm home today in Fernwood, obviously in the traditional territories of the Lekwungen people. I came out to Victoria to do my master's in conflict resolution at the University of Victoria, and then I've stayed here since. And since finishing my master's, I had the opportunity first to work for Indian Residential Schools Resolution Canada, which was a process in place that I participated in reviewing documents from residential schools, so historical records, attendance records, hospital records, the nurse records that I would input into a database. The system was in place so that if any Indigenous person wanted to submit a claim and get the common experience payment or any kind of settlement, they would use that through that process. So it was data processing, not super involved, but it was great to be part of that at really early on in my career. After that, I worked for the Ministry of Indigenous Relations doing treaty negotiations, and I worked on the Kitsim-Kalim and Kitsalis Agreement in Principle. I had a very small touch on the SWASN Final Agreement, which is obviously a really meaningful agreement based out not far from us here, just across the Salish Sea. And then I moved over to the Port of Vancouver to work doing consultation on large infrastructure projects. When I had my second baby, I moved back to Victoria and I found myself over at the Harbour Authority. So yes, I've been doing this for over, I guess, 10 years now in a number of different ways, but I've really enjoyed working and making, I guess, relationships with the local nations.
Well, that's fabulous. And you bring just a wealth of experience to the role. And I know as an organization, we're really grateful to have you here with us, Judy. I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about the work you do. What does it look like on a day-to-day basis? What takes up a lot of your focus and your time and energy? And yeah, tell us a bit about that.
Sure. So I think of my work as really focused around relationship building, which is a really nice place for a chatterbox and people person like myself. So I just think that this role for me is really about building relationships with the local nation. So I do spend a lot of time, not necessarily working with chief and council, but working with Songhees staff, esquimalt staff, working with staff from the Victoria Native Friendship Center, working with Indigenous businesses in Victoria, as well as Indigenous organizations. So I spend a considerable amount of my time just finding opportunities and partnerships with those groups to sort of see if there could be any synergies that GVHA can kind of bring forward and support. So I do quite a bit of that. And then, of course, listeners might know that the Nations have been on our board since 2002. So I support our board of directors, First Nation Economic Development Committee. And we've had a principle, the Harbour Authority has had a First Nations principle since its inception in 2002 to further the economic and cultural aspirations of the nations in the harbour. So for us, that means really finding programs and initiatives that increase Lekwungen presence and participation in some of the properties that we look after here. So yeah, I mean, most of it is really positive, and well, I would say all of it is really positive. It's really nice work to be doing and really important work to help the organization move forward towards Indigenous reconciliation.
No, that's fabulous. Just for those that are listening, if you've got any questions for Judy, use the Q&A function, and we'll pick that up. And I'm actually looking over here, so if you see me peering off screen here, I'm picking up some of the questions that have come up. We do have one question. Before I get into that one question, Judy, maybe you could tell us a little bit more about what some of the major actions that have been taken by GVHA, and maybe you could, take answer that from like what was done maybe before you got here, and then since you've gotten here, you've been a part of a major initiative around First Nations. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that. So a little bit about what we were working on before you got here, and then since you've been here.
Sure. That's exactly what I was thinking about. So First Nations relationships, nothing new to the Harbour Authority. It certainly was, you had strong partnerships well before I came and joined the team. And so looking back at the principle that GVHA has, it's sort of found its way to be manifested many different ways since inception, but a couple initiatives that I think are quite visual out there is obviously the Unity Wall at the Breakwater District. Also just down from the Unity Wall, there's a food burning ceremony site that I think was, I'll get the date wrong. Anyway, an important sort of ceremony that we worked with the Lekwungen people on before I joined the Harbour Authority. And then there was lots of employment programs back then as well. I saw Passport to the Workforce that took place earlier, and opportunities around the food truck and various other ones. So lots of work went on, I think kind of sporadically over time since inception in 2002 with Chief Andy Thomas and Chief Rob Sam on the board of directors. And since I've joined, I've been really looking at the PAR program, which I think we'll talk about a little bit more, but I've been spending a lot of time on working with Lekwungen members around youth initiatives and job shadowing programs, and really trying to support Indigenous business, finding opportunities for procurement at the Harbour Authority, setting up some targets for procurement. Yeah, and then of course, just joining the Canadian Council for Aboriginal Businesses Progressive Aboriginal Relations Program was a pretty key step in, I guess, my work over the last 3 years.
I know you've been busy. That's an understatement. Actually, we've got a question right now, and the question is, what is the best way to engage with our Indigenous community in opportunities that our company will have for various good paying positions?
Great question.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think there's certainly lots of opportunities that are being shared with the nations, and GVHA has developed I guess, kind of a contact list that lists a lot of the local Indigenous employment officers working at the nations, as well as some local organizations and some job sites. So you could reach out to us and we can share with you the list that we use. It's not necessarily exhaustive, and obviously information gets out of date quite quickly. So we update it regularly as contacts and people change, but it is a really good start. So you could use that to share your job posting, but there's probably work you could look at doing internally first around your employment, recruitment, and retention, around any ensuring you have a culturally safe workplace. So if you've done Indigenous cultural training for your staff already, and then maybe if it's not an employment opportunity directly, looking at things that I feel really strongly about working with youth around job shadowing opportunities and, doing kind of 101 programs with community as well. So employment is obviously really great and super important, but there's probably some lower hanging fruit, perhaps even around just opportunities to share what your business does with the nations and finding opportunities in training.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Excellent. Let's talk a little bit about the PAR program, the Progressive Aboriginal Relationship Program. I know, I've been here almost 7 years, and I can tell you that probably one of the proudest sort of achievements that we had as an organization is that when we were recently achieved the PAR Silver, certification. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about what PAR is, the certification and maybe the work. And I think for me, it's not so much about, bronze, silver, gold. It's really about the work that it not forces you to do, but the work that it gets an organization to do in order to better understand and have a stronger relationship with our Indigenous partners. So maybe tell us more about
Yeah.
PAR, the silver certification.
Sure. So PAR, Progressive Aboriginal Relations, is a program that's put on by the Canadian Council for Aboriginal Business, and it's really a benchmarking tool. So it's a certification program that has levels in steps, I guess, in Indigenous relations. So they have 4 pillars. The pillars are leadership, community relations, business development, and employment. And so under each of those 4 kind of brackets, there's a lot of work to be done around decolonizing your procedures and practices, creating an environment at work that's safe for Indigenous peoples to participate in the workforce, looking at your procurement policy, opportunities for procurement, looking at in-kind support and the way you might support local First Nations initiatives. So we started that program in late 2018, and you start as a committed member. So if somebody's thinking about it, you get to be committed for 3 years, where you just kind of watch the process and submit some reports that kind of demonstrate your commitment, and then eventually you apply for certification. So I guess over the last 3 years, we worked really hard on those 4 pillars, particularly I think around business development, really working to learn more about Indigenous businesses in the area, which we had been working with quite a few, pre-2018, but had only a knowledge of a very few vendors. And over the years, we've learned of a lot more vendors, which really helps to increase our procurement of Indigenous business. So that program is a every 3-year program. So it recertifies you every 3 years. So we'll be submitting another submission in 2024 for certification, at which time perhaps we will see gold, but also really proud of our silver certification. It definitely took a lot of work. It required a lot of support from our board of directors and from our executive to kind of move it through a process. And really, I guess more than that, it also kind of infiltrated all the departments to kind of look at each person's work and what their role is in reconciliation. And so great program. You don't need to do the program to do the work. It's just a nice program that kind of helps to facilitate those pieces and sort of encourages you to always keep pushing forward, I would think. So yeah, very proud of our silver certification and the work that came along with it.
Yeah, and I think you were certainly the catalyst and the individual that kind of led our organization through the process. But you also kind of through that developed like a PAR working group, which involved other members of the organization. Can you talk a little bit about that and maybe why it was important for you in the process to include that working group?
Sure. So obviously, I believe that, Indigenous relations, despite my title of First Nations Engagement Manager, it doesn't belong to me in the organization. It really belongs to everybody, and everybody in the organization has a role to play in reconciliation. And I believe that to be true about every Canadian citizen as well. And so at the company at GVHA, I really worked with, every last employee here at GVHA to kind of see what opportunities there were in their work to support Indigenous programs. So that's everything from some of our folks down at our maintenance shop in the dock crew supporting Indigenous job shadowing programs, our manager of finance reviewing all of our procurement and finding, opportunities for Indigenous business, our director of infrastructure, looking at partnerships with Indigenous businesses in our RFP process, it meant our director of communications, who's hosting this call today, finding opportunities like this to profile the work that we're doing and to share it. So HR, our manager of HR, looking at our employment policies and our discrimination and non-harassment policy to make sure it includes a culturally safe environment for Indigenous people. So really is the work of many folks. And so the working group that we set up of just, I think, 5 or 6 people helps to sort of oversee that work throughout our very small company. It's not even a big company, but I think that work is probably even more important in a larger place where you may not have direct contact with every person. So for us, it was really helpful at kind of making sure it infiltrated everybody's work.
Yeah, I think it was just an excellent process for us to go through. And I mean, we're not done. I mean, we're in the process. We're still doing the work, and I think the work will always be ongoing, regardless of whether we maintain silver or we achieve gold. It will always be about the work that we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And in a lot of ways, it's not so much about the destination, but really the journey that we're on with our partners.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so with this certification, what role do you think we as an organization can play in influencing other organizations to follow and participate in the PAR program? What would you encourage them? And maybe if there's organizations that are listening in and they wanted to kind of start, how would you suggest they go?
Right. Well, anybody's welcome to give me a call. I I'm chatty. I like to chat and I like to share our work. So I'm happy to talk with any partners that are interested or any stakeholders or other organizations in the region that are interested in the program. But again, you don't need to do the program. The program's just one way to, track it and to measure it. So I would say, we've had the opportunity over the last 3 years to really work with lots of our partners and even our member agencies to put on this summer a job shadowing program with Lekwungen youth. We partnered with Destination Greater Victoria and Eagle Wing Tours to offer a week-long job shadowing program. We've had the opportunity to work with Songhees, Explore Songhees, to host with them. Well, they hosted the Signs of Lekwungen walking tour, and we organized an event that invited 10 other agencies to kind of participate and join that tour with us, which was really great. I'm working with CRD and SIP right now on our Indigenous business directory, really finding opportunities to expand it and to grow that list. And CRD and SIP are very interested in seeing that happen, as well as the City of Victoria. So yeah, I mean, aside from, the work that I do in building relationships with the Esquimalt Nation and Songhees Nation directly, it's also about building relationships with other like-minded organizations and really trying to find opportunities to work together. It's a lot easier if we're working together than for all of us to be building our own directory or all of us to be doing our own programs. It can probably create a lot of synergies in working together and also reduce the burden on the nations, because it's a lot. I think they have a lot on their plates. So when we can work together to, find those synergies and opportunities, that can really support the nations a bit further. So yeah,
All right.
partnerships are important.
Yeah. Yeah, partnerships are key, and I think for me, it's not so much about look at us, we've done this. It's like, hey, how can we help you look at this process and further your commitment to not your but you as a group or as an individual to further your commitment to um, Indigenous relations. So, okay, thanks, Judy. Just maybe moving away from the PAR program.
Mhm.
There's been a lot of talk recently around Indigenous territorial acknowledgements, and that they should be more than just a brief statement. Like, for example, we started off today by recognizing, the traditional territory that we are on. But can you elaborate a bit more about, your thoughts around that and territorial
Mhm.
acknowledgements and maybe where they should go or need to go, or more work or understanding that needs to be done?
Sure. I think land acknowledgements are so important, and we obviously are seeing them take place everywhere, from the legislator to our office to perhaps even our community meetings that we have. They're really important, and they need, I think, to be done. We need to speak truth to power and acknowledge that we're holding business on unceded territory. And so really important piece of the puzzle. I don't think can be underestimated how important it is to state that again and again, right? It's really important. However, there does need to be more work than just those words. And so I think the expectation that land acknowledgements are not enough is certainly the case. And, companies need to be looking at, what are their values? What is their organization supporting in terms of community partnerships with the local nations or initiatives, and trying to really work to decolonize their practices and procedures. And I think the tides are always shifting and the bar is always raising in terms of Indigenous relations. And it's time to do, I think, a lot more than just land acknowledgements. And that would include things like looking at your procurement policy, looking at your employment plans and finding opportunities to work with the nation. So land acknowledgements, I think, will always be really important. It's just a matter of how organizations do more than that, like that's not enough, obviously. So yeah, really important, but just one small piece of the much mountain of work that needs to be done.
Yeah. Excuse me. I think that's so important. Is you're right. There needs to be the actions that are being taken by the individual or the organization to stand behind those words, and they just can't be, a statement that's made. Yeah, there needs to be that work. And okay, so what are we doing to support that
Mm-hmm.
behind the scenes?
Mm-hmm.
Um, let's talk a little bit about, we're seeing a kind of a rebalance to tourism. And I know the Songhees Nation in particular are very much involved in the tourism side. Can you tell us a bit more about the work that you're working on around Explore Songhees and what that's
Sure.
all about?
Sure. Well, Explore Songhees is amazing. If you haven't had the opportunity to work with their team or to do the Signs of Lekwungen walking tour or take an opportunity to go on one of their cultural canoe tours, you really should. It's an exceptional tour and you'll learn a lot. So they've been based out of the properties that GVHA manages for quite a few years now and are really growing, I think, in size, and have spent the last couple of years with the pandemic kind of shifting and building up their team. And so over the last few years, I've had the opportunity to work with them. I've been, working, of course, on their activation at Ship Point, where they have the food truck located. Their Signs of Lekwungen walking tours also operate out of Ship Point. There is one of their first stops, the Spindle Whirl, in front of the Inner Harbor Marina Causeway. We also work with them on their cultural canoe tours when they're running, and they weren't running for the last couple of years because of the pandemic, but we're hoping they're back in 2022. So they have dock space down at the marina for their canoe, and obviously start and end their cultural canoe tours from the marina. And then the south side of the lower causeway, you might remember, was the Indigenous Artist Causeway program. So there was a lot of Indigenous artists underneath on the steps of the south side. That program's also been pretty quiet over the last couple of years with the pandemic. So I'm working with Explore Songhees, Esquimalt Nation, Songhees Nation to try to revitalize that program for 2022. So yeah, lots going on. They're super busy. It's obviously a priority for them to look at tourism, but more around sharing Lekwungen culture with visitors and with residents. And so really great partner to have here in Victoria, and a community that really wants to help educate folks like myself and non-Indigenous peoples in the value and the history of Lekwungen culture here in Victoria. So that partnership's really strong because I think there's some real mutual interest. And obviously with the return of cruise in the new year, hopefully there'll be more visitors in Victoria to learn more about the offerings of Explore Songhees. So yeah, really great, really positive. And they have such great staff to work with, which is really nice. Cecilia Dick does the Signs of Lekwungen walking tour, and she's really exceptional, and all of their staff have been really great to work with. So easy work, fun work.
Easy work, fun stuff to do.
Yeah.
Just a reminder, everyone, if you've got a question for Judy, just to use the Q&A function, and it will find its way to me. Judy, the Esquimalt Nation is one of our other First Nations member agency. Can you elaborate on some of the work that you've done with the Esquimalt Nation over the last year?
Sure. So Esquimalt Nation don't have a strong tourism interest right now. So Explore Songhees is operating out of Ship Point in the Inner Harbor, working on their tourism brand. And Esquimalt Nation has been working really on large infrastructure projects on reserves. So they have eight townhouse development coming up, and I think like a 55 resident unit coming up. Also a childcare center. So there's been tons of work happening on reserve. They're also working on their land code, and just lots of, I think, land and community work. Our work with the nation over the last couple of years has really been through our 1%, our First Nations Revenue Contribution Fund. So GVHA dedicates up to 1% of our operational revenue to programs and projects that further the economic and cultural aspirations of the nations in the harbor. And so some of that will be projects that may not actually transpire in the harbor directly, but support the nation's overall goals around community wellness and health. And so some of the programs we've supported over the years have been their childcare programs, governance training for their new chief and council, a casual labor force that we hope will build up the labor pool at Esquimalt Nation that'll eventually perhaps make their way down to positions here in the Inner Harbor and at Ogden Point. Yeah, our relationship with them is really positive. Just got the opportunity to meet with them last week with our board chair and talk about what other projects we could work on in the new year. So yeah, really great, but they're very busy. Hard to get a hold of sometimes because they're really have a lot of community projects, and the types of developments that they're working on are just really big and take a lot of time. So yeah, but they're great partners.
Yeah, they're both, I find both phenomenal partners to work with. And
Mm-hmm.
again, I learn so much from them anytime I've engaged with, be it their chief or council. I'm always come away with something new that I've learned. Judy, got a question for you. There's a lot of work being done with the Esquimalt and Songhees, but is there work being done with other nations or people that are not in those two communities, but maybe are First Nations and live in the region?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, exactly. So we work with the two nations most closely. They are in our board of directors. And so we have most touch points with the Esquimalt Nation and Songhees Nation. They're also our host. We operate on their land. So our relationship with them is, I think, paramount, and we do ton with them. But we've also, in the last 3 years, reached out to the Victoria Native Friendship Centre and a number of Indigenous organizations in Victoria, including the academic institutions at UVic and Camosun that have Indigenous departments. So we've been working with them, with the Victoria Native Friendship Centre. We've actually had quite a few partnerships with them. We've had an opportunity to tour their site. We've done a small fundraiser for them. We've participated in their hospitality program, and we've also participated in their employment and career development program. So I'm hoping to meet with their Director of Careers, Employment and Training again later this month to talk about an incubation project, a business incubation project that they're working on at VNFC. And so there might be more opportunities there, but certainly through VNFC is probably our #1 touch point with the urban Indigenous population in Victoria. And I think that's a really important relationship to have, and a relatively new one for the organization. And so I see that there probably will be lots of further learning from that, and hopefully more opportunities for partnership. Good question.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. You know, obviously much more than just the Songhees Nation and Esquimalt Nation in Victoria, and it's always good for us to remind ourselves of that, even though, as you say, both the Songhees Nation and Esquimalt Nation are on our board. Um, you know, for the other organizations that may be listening in, Judy, you know, and they want to explore their role with reconciliation and Indigenous relations and really haven't maybe focused on it, how would you counsel them as to where to begin? How do they start? Where do they start?
Hmm.
What kind of maybe small steps can they make?
Good question. I really believe it's important to resource this. And that's not just a pitch for my job, I swear, but I just think it's really important because I think everybody's so busy, and I've seen it, you know, I've seen people try to do this off the side of their desk, and it's just really hard because so many other operational issues come up. A pandemic comes up, life happens, and I think it's important, and it may not be that you need a full-time, manager of Indigenous relations, and it just might be a small consultant you need or a part-time position. But I do really believe that resourcing, it's important. Having said that, if you are small and that's not possible, you have to do something. And I think we always get a little bit anxious, perhaps, about doing something wrong or offending somebody. And so often we freeze and we don't do anything. And that's probably true for lots of organizations who find them in 2021, having not talked to Esquimalt Nation or Songhees Nation yet. And so I would really encourage, businesses that happen to reach out to the nations, knowing that, with what's going on today in 2021, they have a lot more demand for their time than ever before. So you may not get a response, but reaching out to the nations is probably really important. That could be staff, reaching out to their employment officer, reaching out to their health department, depending what kind of organization you are. But I would say just do something, right? Like start that relationship. Everything that I know in the last 12 years is how important relationships are. And so it's really hard to do this work if you don't put in the time. So for me, that would be, sending a letter, picking up the phone, and in non-pandemic times, stopping by the office. I wouldn't encourage that now. But in normal times, that would be a really important first step. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think we've been very fortunate that as an organization, we made it a priority to staff your role and to focus efforts in that area. I think also too, if I were to provide any perspective to an organization, it might be to start with some cultural training. I know that
Mm.
you've helped facilitate that for us as an organization, and I know for me in my role and in talking to the board, that's really been the impetus and started a lot of the thinking is around cultural training. I mean, maybe you could just talk a little bit about
Mm-hmm.
that,
Mm-hmm.
and what work GVHA has done in that area. Maybe the connection between the cultural training and then being able to use that as a way to start or embark upon
Sure.
working with the nations.
Sure. That's a great one. Yeah, I think, if we were to just randomly do like a Lekwungen job shadowing program tomorrow with nothing being done before, folks might be like, why? Why are you doing that? What's the impetus? What's the motivation? And so I do really believe that, that cultural training, that Indigenous history piece, the Canadian history piece really has to be shared. And I think as our workforce ages and we have these younger folks coming up that are actually being learned this curriculum in school, maybe we won't be needing to provide everybody Indigenous cultural training in the workforce in 30 years because they'll have learned it from my son's age at 7 in school. But right now we have a workforce that might have been in school in the 70s and 80s and weren't really taught a lot about Indigenous history and in colonization in Canada and the effects of residential schools. So critical to bring staff along and to make sure everybody has an understanding of why we're starting to work towards Indigenous reconciliation, why we have these programs in place. And so we've had the opportunity to work with a few folks at GVHA. We worked with Indigenous corporate training, Bob Joseph. He came in March 2019 and did a day-long workshop, which was really, really important around the history, largely around the history of Canada. It wasn't a particularly local session. It was more about Canadian history and Indigenous relations in Canada, the Indian Act and things like that, a really 101, but a whole day. So it was a pretty intense 101. And then over time, we've had lots of opportunities well before me, Ian, you know more about them than I do, but in our PAR application, I had to compile them all. Things from like a barbecue at Esquimalt Nation, the Signs of Lekwungen walking tour with Songhees, the food burning down at Ogden Point, the Unity Wall, like all those things really help to build staff's understanding of, Indigenous culture, well, Lekwungen culture in particular, and, where we live and work and play here in Victoria. So all of those pieces were really important. We recently worked with Indigenous Perspective Society. Our board did training with them and some of our managers did training with them on cultural competency, learning about, what it means to be culturally agile, learning about privilege and social location, all topics I think many organizations are thinking about right now after the craziness of the last couple of years. And so I could recommend, IPS and, Indigenous corporate training. And of course, just the nations themselves are a wealth of knowledge. If you can, build that relationship with them and find an opportunity to do some community learning. Explore Songhees and their Signs of Lekwungen walking tour is a prime example, I think, of a great one that can really help to ground your work. Why are we doing what we're doing? Well, you live in Lekwungen territory. You live, we work just steps from Wasekum. That stuff's all really important in centering our work in Indigenous reconciliation at GVHA. So yeah, and there's many. I couldn't list the different folks that are authoring Indigenous cultural training. I'm sure there's many, but yeah, nice to learn directly from the nations if you can.
Yeah, it is. I think those. I mean, the training that from a personal perspective, you talked about earlier about the awkward questions and moving forward with some awkwardness because you have this fear about offending, and I know that's how I felt. I still feel that to this day. But I think the cultural training, I think, really allowed me to ask some awkward questions and some questions that I'm thinking, oh, I should have known that, but
Mm-hmm.
I didn't. But it gave
Mm-hmm.
me that opportunity to ask those awkward questions to learn more.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think you spoke really well around the importance of cultural training, and I think I would just echo that it's a great
Mm-hmm.
place to start. Uh, as an organization, if you're looking to understand what your role is in reconciliation. Um, we haven't got any more questions, but one last sort of thought from you, Judy, before we sign off is
Mm-hmm.
what's been your favorite experience or
Mm.
experiences in working with us in your role?
Oh, that's a good one. Uh, there's been so many things. Obviously, people person, so just love the role in general. But um, maybe what I'm most proud of doing, or what I've really, I guess, taken a liking to, is our Indigenous business work and our work supporting local Indigenous business. Having having the opportunity to meet with Indigenous entrepreneurs, and that often crosses not just they're not just necessarily from esquimalt or Songhees either. They can be members from the Indigenous community in Victoria, and so I meet lots of different folks. I've really enjoyed spending time learning about their work and finding opportunities to procure their services when we have budget, which is on hold a lot right now with the pandemic. But I see lots of opportunities to support local Indigenous businesses in Victoria, and I just really like learning about them. Maybe as just a procurer of things in general, I like to know how I can make my money be more powerful, I guess, in the community, whether that be through supporting Indigenous businesses, local business, women-owned business, all those kinds of things. So that's been really fun work, I think. Yeah, really enjoyed that.
Well, Judy, like I said at the beginning, we are so lucky to have you here with us at GVHA. You're just a wealth of experience. I'm learning a lot from you, and I want to thank you for all the work you've done and all the work you're going to continue to
Mm-hmm.
do for us. And so I hope everyone that's been listening has found this session to be informative. I know in the chat function you've got Judy's contact information, and if you missed that, feel free to reach out to us or to me directly at ceo@gvha.ca. I want to thank everyone for tuning in and watch our social media for more Waterside chats. But Judy, thanks for your time today. It's been a great chatting with you.
Yes, thanks for having me. Have a good day.